Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Barnyard Language. Katie just finished saying shut up to the dog, so I'm sure that it will be quiet as we try and record our update for this week. So, how are all the cute calves? What's happening in Iowa?
Well, Arlene, as I was just saying, my husband called as I was sitting down to record this to tell me that there was a coyote eating cleanings out in the calf pasture, much to the consternation of all the cows. The coyote didn't sound like it had any interest in anything except the cleanings, but the cows do not know or care.
Right. They just have to look after their babies. That's their job. And how many babies do we have today on the ground?
8, I think. I think we're up to 8. We were at 5 yesterday morning. We had 1, and then we had 4 more in quick succession, and then we had nothing for like a week and a half, and now we had 3 more in the last 18 hours or whatever, which is good, because that's like half the calves we should have this fall, I think. We bought 2 new rams last weekend, so that was exciting, or I guess it was Friday, so I guess it was this weekend.
So it's been a big couple of weeks for boys. You got a new bull. You got a couple of rams. Now, do we have names for these gentlemen?
My children have named them. Whether those names will stick,
Are they going to stick or not?
they're currently named Oreo and S'mores, I think.
That's the rams?
Yeah. I'm not sure what it is with little kids and naming animals after dessert items. So I know the guinea pigs are making it's a high chaos morning. We went to only buy 1 ram, but Jim and I couldn't agree, so now we have 2 rams.
So then are we tracking who is the father of the lambs, and then we get to decide in the spring who's right?
I went with the Dorper cross, Jim went with a Pure Katahdin, so we'll see. The nice part about breeding for meat instead of for, breeding stock is that you can crossbreed whatever the hell you want. So we'll see how it goes. And we bought a bull week before last, so it's been a big, expensive couple weeks, but we're making progress. The guys took the last crop of hay off for this season. It's so dry that it's hard to bale. Jim said some of what he took off last night was 11% when he baled it, which is very dry. Bean harvest has started in our area. Some folks are starting to run corn. Arlene, I think I sent you a photo. Somebody lost a wheel off their wagon load of beans in the middle of downtown the other day. You can really tell a farm town by how many people slow way down to look, including us. So,
Yeah. And then try and identify whose wagon it is.
yeah. And especially because it's where they just repaved the highway last summer, and that wagon took a pretty good chunk out of the pavement when it hit. So I'm sure it'll be fine. But
I'm guessing it was full.
Yeah, it was very, very full of beans when it happened. Other than that, not a lot. We got our school photos back. I will admit that I love school photos when they're derpy. The derpier the better as far as I'm concerned. They're not... I don't think school photos are actually supposed to be good. I think they should be ridiculous.
No, I don't think that's really their criteria anymore. I think, back in the day when, like when we were growing up, you didn't get nearly as many photos of yourself, as a kid, right? Like my mom was really good at taking pictures, actually. So I do have some very full photo albums, but, to actually specifically do your hair and pick out your outfit and go in for school photos. I mean, now with my kids, I usually forget when it is school photo day, if I even paid attention to the email that said it was coming up. My high school kids, it was the second day of school, so I didn't even know that it was happening. And I'm not even sure when the last time was that I ordered school photos. I enjoy looking them up, but I don't often want to actually spend money to get them, mostly because they end up kind of looking goofy and uncomfortable.
Yeah. I do I order the 8x10s, because I'm that mom who's hanging them all up in the hallway up the stairs, which I really enjoy just as a way to look back at how old the kids are getting. But we also only have two. If we had four kids, I probably wouldn't bother because that would be a lot of school photos. I mean, even two kids is still a lot. And we get like the magnets for the grandparents, which is nice. But yeah, that's a good point that we're not living in an era anymore where you got maybe like two family vacation photos and then your school photos, and maybe you went to like J.C. Penney's and got family photos done once if you were fancy.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe a shot on Halloween or Christmas by the tree or something. But
Yeah. Yeah. Or glamour shots if you were real fancy.
I was not that fancy, but we definitely have some from a photo studio. I think it was a Sears, maybe still had a photo studio back in the day that we went to once or twice. That was a whole family
Yeah.
outing.
So how are things at your place?
So silage got done last week, so that was exciting. We had the crew came, did one day and filled one silo and got mostly filled with another, and then it poured like torrential rain the next day. But it actually kind of worked out because it gave the silos time to settle, and then when they came back the day after, then they could top those up and then fill the bags. We had the annual discussion about whether we're going to put in a bunk or not, but we haven't actually decided on either the financial side or the location part of where we would put it to not impede future construction if anyone was ever going to want to build a new barn or all that kind of stuff. So it's still a discussion. So bags it is. And what else has been going on? There's been another week, another fair. I didn't go to this one, but that's okay. Oh, went to another puzzle competition. My sister and I are into speed puzzling, and this one actually had good prize money. So it was kind of fun. Indigo, which is like our national bookstore, basically, like the only real like chain bookstore that's left in Canada. They had a cross Canada competition. So at a whole bunch of their locations, everyone got the same puzzle. And so we went to one that was about an hour away for us. And we got a free puzzle for showing up. The puzzle that we did, we won, of course. I'm sounding cocky, of course, but we did win. So then we also got a 2,000 piece puzzle for winning and a $100 gift card between the two of us. So that was pretty sweet for I think it was $35 to enter. So that was our biggest winning yet. Speed puzzling is not lucrative, but it is fun.
I like the idea that this will be like the what is it, like the World Series of poker, but it's just gonna be like the World Series of jigsaw puzzles, and it's just gonna be, is it you and Maida or you and
Yeah, it's Maida and I. Yeah, and we just coming out off of Worlds actually, which were just held in Spain. So we have been watching them on live feeds, and there's commentary. It's quite entertaining actually. So we are discussing whether or not we can go to Worlds next year, but it is right during silage, and we're both on farms, so we just have to figure out whether we can figure out the logistics of getting to Europe for puzzling. But why not, right? You only live once. Yeah.
why not? You know, I mean, if you're at the top of your puzzling game,
So we'll have to do some training, finger exercises and such.
yeah,
What else has been going on the farm? Oh, milking cows. We have had a bit of a lull, and now we're going back into another stretch of. I think we've got 10 to calve in the next week or so. So, the calf barn starts to empty out a little bit, and then we just fill her back up again. So I'm sure my father-in-law is thrilled at that prospect because he's our number one calf feeder. And yeah, I think that's the main stuff. It's looking very fallish outside. We have a laneway. I think I've posted pictures of it before on our social media. But our farm name is actually Maple AIN, which sounds like Maple Lane if you say it real fast. And we have maple trees all up and down our driveway. So it's starting to look very pretty right now.
yeah, we're the walnuts are raining across our yard, and the livestock trailer is currently parked under a walnut tree, and it's real noisy.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and welcome our guest for this week?
All right.
Today we are excited to be talking to Jessie MacQuarrie, who's joining us from Prince Edward Island. So we get to add another province to our map of North America. We're trying to cover all our provinces and states, so it's exciting to have someone from a new place for us. And Jessie, we always start our interviews with the exact same question. So this is your intro to our listeners. So we're always asking, what are you growing? So that can cover crops and livestock and businesses and kids and all kinds of other stuff. So Jessie, what are you growing?
So we are growing a Holstein herd. We have 78 in the milking herd right now, milking and 2D Laval robots. Probably about 200 animals total on the farm with dry cows and young stock as well. As far as crops, I had to double check the numbers with my husband because that's not my area of expertise. There's 350 acres total. Of that, we've got about 70 that's clover, 140 corn, and the rest is grass for our cow feed. We don't grow anything else crop wise or do custom work that for selling feed to anybody else or anything like that. I guess I'm growing my career as a veterinarian. I've been a large animal veterinarian for 9 years. Have worked between the three Maritime Provinces, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI. Currently, the clinic I'm at is in PEI, about an hour away from the farm. And we are growing a set of 3.5-year-old boy-girl twins.
That is a lot of different things. And we've already, even before we hit record, we heard some chickens. So we know that they're wandering around, maybe even under your feet at the moment.
Yes, the non-productive animals that don't really pay the bills include some laying hens, a completely useless goat, and a couple horses.
Perfect. That's the kind of farm we all like.
Yeah, there's plenty of us on farms with unproductive animals, Jessie. I think, Arlene, you might have the most productive animals. I don't think I saw any unproductive animals at your house.
Yeah, just the pets, I think. The chickens got killed off, and I decided not to replace them once the raccoons took them out. And yeah, I didn't add any more. And for what it's worth, our rules are pretty strict about having anything in the barn other than dairy animals. So unless I was going to populate other barns around the property, it would require another location. And I tend towards being a little bit lazy on that front. So I didn't want to add any more animals. And my husband is fairly focused on just cows. So yeah, we don't have too many extras.
Well, the goat is the only patient that I've drug home in 9 years of practice. So
Yes, you would have, that extra temptation of someone, people probably offer you animals now and then. Is that a product of your career?
oh my God, barn cats like crazy.
Yes. Does anyone ever try and sneak them into the vet truck?
Not necessarily that the owners have tried to sneak them in the truck, but the animals have tried to sneak themselves in.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure they do. I know even our seed salesman the other day posted a picture of a cat, and I had to make sure that it wasn't ours because one had snuck on into her truck on somebody's farm.
Yeah, Arlene, it seems like, I mean, Levi's pretty productive in his own way, right?
Yeah, our dog. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. They have a Jack Russell, Jessie, who's real busy, which, I mean, I guess is a Jack Russell thing. So,
I've got a border collie. I totally get it.
Jessie, what is your ag
So I grew up on what I would call kind of a hobby farm in Nova Scotia. We mostly had horses, but had some cattle over the years as far as beef cows. I did show beef and 4-H for a family friend, but I wouldn't say that I've grown up on like a commercial operation by any sense. Obviously, I'm on one now. My husband and I met in 2011, and that began my foray into the dairy industry, I guess. But I was always involved like in 4-H and knew that I wanted to be involved in rural communities growing up.
So were you one of those kids who was like, at 5, I want to be a vet, and then all the way through that was the goal, or was it a later in life decision?
No, that was a pretty early on goal, and I knew quite early on that I wanted to do large animal.
Mm-hmm. And was it the horses or the beef cows that drew you in that direction?
Both, actually. I like kind of doing a 50-50 split of the cattle and the horses.
So as a vet and the wife of a dairy farmer, are you the vet for your own farm, or do you choose to have someone else take on that particular responsibility?
Yeah, so I do the herd work for the dairy farm here. When I first graduated, I was practicing in Sussex, New Brunswick, which is about 3 hours away. So logistically, at that time, it made sense for somebody else to be doing herd health through the week. I would sometimes check heifers on the weekends or when I was home, but now that I'm, for the most part, practicing in PEI and home at night, I do the vet work here. So we do a herd health every couple of weeks, kind of the preventative maintenance stuff for the calves, dehorning, all of that stuff, the occasional calving, the occasional sick cow, nothing too crazy.
So some of the time you've been working a fair distance then from home?
Yeah, so my first 4 years in practice, I was in Sussex. So I had an apartment and would stay there through the week and come home on the weekends so that I wasn't on call. So we basically had a long distance marriage for 4 years.
Yeah, that would be a lot of commuting. And it's not like you're just working in one place when you're a large animal vet too. You're covering a lot of territory every day, depending where your clients are as well. So on your practice now, do you cover the whole island? I know like for Canadians, we always think the PI is really small, but end to end, like there is a lot of territory to cover there. Are you covering all of the province?
No, so our farm is kind of located in the south central part of the island. We're about halfway between the Confederation Bridge and Charlottetown. The clinic that I work at is about an hour away in the eastern end of the island. So the like the territory that the clinic would cover would be kind of east of Charlottetown.
So, Jesse, do you use your veterinary rank to to well, I was going to say pull rank, um, override your husband's decisions or have the final say on her decisions? Are you like, one of us has a veterinary degree and one of us is you? Because that's what I would do personally.
He's actually really good about getting my input and listening to my opinion on herd health stuff, and it's usually kind of a mutual decision made together. So I've got to give him credit that way. He's really good.
I guess you could always bill him for the farm visit if he gives you a
Well, and kind of the rule that was in place anywhere else that I worked with colleagues of mine that also had firms and that I try to follow is if I'm doing it on my own time, I don't bill. If I'm taking away time that I'm supposed to be at the clinic or working for other clients, then it gets billed for. But fortunately, we're usually able to shuffle things around in my personal time that I'm not at the clinic.
How do you find time to do the tallow products and all the other things that you're doing? Do you sleep? I think this is the first question we need to address.
Admittedly, I've had zero time to do it in the last probably 2.5 months, to be completely honest. Spring's definitely the busiest time of year for the clinic and everything else that's going on, and we know what it's like with farming too, so it's very much gone on the back burner. I'd say it's probably more of like a fall winter project. It just kind of gives me a little bit of a creative outlet where I can decompress and I don't necessarily have to use my sciencey brain.
What kind of stuff are you making?
I started making cow's milk soap. So that was kind of my first little foray into it. That would have been last April I started. And then just kind of marketing like to friends and neighbors on Facebook a little bit. I wouldn't say that I have a giant business with it by any stretch, but it's a fun little side hobby. And then I started making tallow lotion for my own use because my hands were completely dried out after doing cabins in the winter. And then when my husband actually started using it and said, "Hey, my hands aren't completely cracked like they normally are in the wintertime," then I kind of started doing the same thing, marketing a little bit locally to family and friends. Did a couple craft fairs last year. Sometimes I have people pick up product at the clinic.
So then, are you rendering tallow in the house or does it come rendered or how does that work?
So when I first started, I was primarily doing some locum work in New Brunswick in the Moncton area, and I was buying it pre-rendered from a client there. Once I started at the clinic I'm at now, obviously that wasn't necessarily easily accessible anymore, so I figured out how to render it on my own. So I do wet rendering in a crock pot and kind of go from there.
I've rendered pork fat. I Does beef fat smell any better than pork fat does when you render it? Because you know, I think my thought was that it would smell like bacon. I don't know why I thought it would, like I don't encounter a lot of pork fat in the wild, so just in my head, pork fat smells like bacon. Um, it does not when you're rendering it smell like bacon. It's not.
Yeah, like the initial, so I'll render it kind of twice, and there's definitely more of a beefy smell kind of on the first render, but on the second go around, there's definitely not as much odor.
So I've been wondering about. I've been to Prince Edward Island a handful of times, and I was wondering about, as someone who lives there, what is it like to be somewhere where the population? I didn't look up the statistics, but I'm guessing the population probably triples, quadruples in the summertime, and then kind of like shrinks back to the people who actually live there in the late fall. So, what is it like to live in a place where all of a sudden there's a whole lot more people than there normally are?
We've got kind of more of a year-round population than what some people think. Definitely like your tourist-heavy areas kind of shut down in the winter, especially like Cavendish and the Avonlea Village. I remember being a vet student and going to do a farm call up that way, and like the traffic lights stopped because it was February and nobody was there. But where Charlottetown's like a university city, and there's been a pretty big influx of like immigrant populations from other countries, which is fantastic. I wouldn't say that the population dwindles kind of once tourist season is over, like it would have been years prior.
I guess I kind of just assumed it was still, the crowds of people coming across the bridge now, or it used to be the ferry in the summertime and then everyone leaves.
Yeah, no, and it's like there's definitely more traffic on the roads in the summertime. The big country concert, Cavendish Beach Music Festival, was this past weekend, and everywhere was kind of chaotically busy as far as traffic and lineups.
So you were born in Nova Scotia. How many years does it take to be from the island, or will you always be from away?
Well, apparently now with the immediate family, I count as an islander. I think to kind of outside of the circle, you're always from away a little bit. But where my kids were born here, they're definitely islanders, even if they leave and never come back.
Okay, that's the criteria.
Exactly.
Jesse, so we ask your kids are what, 3.5? So were they born during the pandemic then? Is that right?
Yeah, they were, I would say, kind of like mid COVID, January 22.
So I'm picturing you're already a vet. You've already got dairy cows, right? You're not doing tallow yet, but you're like tallow adjacent. The pandemic starts, and then you're like, it would really just put this whole experience over the top, this half decade of my life, is if I had twins. And not even like somehow in my head having twins of the same sex seems less chaotic than having one of each. I don't know why. I This is probably filed along with rendering pork fat will smell like bacon, and also same-sex twins would be less trouble. Um, how was that transition? Now that you really if you say it was super easy, I'm going to be a little disappointed because like pandemic twins. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, it was kind of a complicated pregnancy right from the get go. I was scheduled to have a C section at 38 weeks, ended up having an emergency section at 35. So they were in the NICU for 14 days. At that time, because it was close to the holidays and there were concerns about extra travel and increase in COVID outbreaks and everything, anybody coming to PEI from out of province had to self isolate for 4 days before they were able to interact with everyone. So, where mom's in Nova Scotia, basically, once she got the word that, hey, your grandkids are coming, she and my sister came over, isolated in our house for 4 days. I was staying in the hospital. My husband was staying with his parents, who were living in the main farmhouse at the time. And the nurses basically said, you're only allowed to have 3 visitors in the NICU, including parents. And I was like, well, can they have 3 each since there's 2 of them? But apparently that doesn't work. So then it kind of was a matter of, okay, well, which grandparent gets to go? And thankfully, my mother-in-law was like, I'm going to get to see them every day where I live in the yard. So, like, let Jesse's mom be the one to go see them in the hospital. So that part was a little bit chaotic. Um, we also sold the place we were living in at the time when the twins were 3.5 months old, moved into the farmhouse. My in-laws were looking to downsize, had a mini home on order. As everybody experienced during COVID, there was delays and backlogs, so we were all sharing the house together for 6 months with 2 infants.
Wow, that's a lot of togetherness.
Oh, and just because we don't like to be bored, that's when we started putting the robots in, and startup happened at the end of March.
That is a lot. So when the babies were in the NICU, did you then also get discharged, or were you able to stay at the hospital the whole time they were there?
So I was admitted for 2 nights where it had the C-section. I was discharged after that, but they had what they call a care by parent room so that you had the option to stay the night in the hospital if you chose to do so. I stayed for 1 night after I was discharged. It was a shared room amongst 4 moms, and I didn't get much sleep. So the next night I stayed with my husband at his parents' place, and then once we were able to go back to our house, once my mom and sister were done isolating from coming out of province, then we did that. And as much as it felt like I was abandoning them by leaving them in the NICU at night, I mean, they obviously had the best possible babysitters they could have, and being able to get a full night's sleep in my own bed for a couple of weeks before being completely thrown into twin motherhood and sleep deprivation was honestly a godsend.
Yeah, and to recover yourself from surgery, that's a pretty big thing for your own body as well. So as someone who's never had multiples, what do I not understand about bringing home 2 babies at the same time?
We were given kind of pretty strict instructions that they needed to be fed every 3 hours for the first 3 months. So we had a schedule figured out, but everything took twice as long. So if everything was going fast, we could get 2 kids fed and changed and back to bed in an hour. If it wasn't going fast, it could be an hour and a half, and then you're like, oh crap, I gotta do this again in maybe like another hour, hour and a half. Okay, so we kind of ended up doing everything in shifts so that each person at least got kind of a little bit of a longer block to sleep. So we would both feed at 8 p.m. We would each take a baby. My husband would go to bed then. I'd stay up and do the 11 o'clock feeding. I'd go to bed. He'd get up, do the 2 a.m. feeding, let me sleep. I'd get up and do the 5 a.m. feedings while he was milking, and then we each fed one again at 8 a.m.
And that's assuming that those babies go back to sleep between the feedings, right? Which I'm sure that they sometimes did and sometimes didn't.
Yeah, and it took us a little while to figure out like what stuff we needed to of, and we didn't necessarily need doubles of everything. Like we didn't need 2 baby bathtubs because we were never going to be bathing 2 kids simultaneously. Just that kind of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think about until you're in it.
Were there things you found that you needed more than twice as many of? I feel like somehow it feels like the chaos of like wipes and diapers and things. I don't feel like it would be, I mean, maybe because you haven't had a single baby. It feels like you might need 3 times as many diapers for 2 babies as you do for 1 baby. Simply because the explosion risk of 2 babies running short on something seems substantially higher.
Yeah, I would say we definitely had a fair stash of diapers and wipes. We always tried to have a decent stash of formula, and of course, there were formula shortages at that time too.
Oh, right. Yeah, add that to your ad stress list.
Yeah, that was real fun. The baby Brezza was a godsend. Like, I would never go without that. It was like a Keurig that just instantly made the formula. It was amazing.
And so once they're kind of out of that every 3 hours stage, how did you then kind of break up your day and share the work I mean, I know that dairy farmers don't have a lot of free time sometimes either. So, but then you're also transitioning to robots during that time too. So I'm not that it means you necessarily have free time. You just have different chunks of chore time, right?
A little bit more flexibility with when you can get stuff done, I guess. Yeah. It was just kind of a team sport to keep them alive, to be honest. And we were very, very lucky to have my in laws being as involved as they were. And most of my husband's family lives pretty close by, so they have a couple of aunties and tons of cousins that like fussing over them too.
I will say for me, my most challenging stage is like around 1 when they really start to move but have no sense of self-preservation. So what is like early toddler life like with 2 who are potentially running in opposite directions?
We're still kind of in that phase at 3.5, to be honest. So
Jesse, my kids are 7 and 8, and we're still in that stage. I feel bad just mentioning that. I'm sure yours will totally grow out of it in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Absolutely. We'll start acting like humans, and we'll not still be like this in another 5 years.
well, and it's like they have opinions and they don't hesitate to tell you about it, but you can't reason or logic with them yet either.
Yeah, that's right. So from your bio that you gave us before this interview, I know that you said that both your children are neurodivergent. At what stage were you starting to see signs that led you in that direction? And I know for everyone that the path to a diagnosis is different, so I'm just curious about like who your supports were along the way and what the path to diagnosis looked like.
Yeah, so I would say kind of that like 15 to 18 month mark is when I started noticing some things, primarily like regressions and milestones. Like around 8 or 9 months, my daughter would start kind of babbling and saying like individual words, and then she kind of regressed to not speaking at all. Um, she would very much like her favorite thing to do was sit and stack blocks in a pattern for hours, and it had to be a very specific pattern, and she didn't want you to disrupt it or try to help. So that was kind of what made me initially suspicious when the twins had their, and I noticed somewhat similar signs with my son. They both kind of present very differently with their sensory needs now, which I guess I'll get into kind of chronologically. But when they had their 18-month vaccines and their assessment with public health, we kind of brought our concerns up then. So they had put in a referral to the pediatrician. Um, so my daughter was the first one to get referred to peds. So April of 2024, when she was 2 and a bit, was when she was diagnosed by the pediatrician. My son didn't have his appointment with the pediatrician until February of this year, 2025. Um, they also require a pediatric psychologist to diagnose them in order to be able to access some supports and disability funding and stuff like that. So my daughter had her assessment this May, and we're still waiting for my son's assessment. So I guess I would say we're still kind of in the middle of our diagnosis journey. We've got, we've been using like a speech therapist, occupational therapist, all tons of support. The daycare that they're at right now, we're waiting for them to get a one-on-one person. Like they're on the list. It just hasn't kind of gotten to that point yet. But their educators are absolutely fantastic and they absolutely adore them. So yeah, it was probably a little bit after the year-old mark when I started noticing like regressions and milestones and particular patterns and stuff like that.
Hmm. And so you said that their sensory needs now are kind of different from each other. How do you, and I mean, and their educators too, try and meet the needs of 2 kids who, I mean, any of us who have multiple kids are trying to meet multiple kids' needs, but especially with kids who are neurodivergent, that becomes, sometimes more complicated or harder to do. So how do you manage their needs and I guess your own at the same time?
Especially, I'm just going to call out that 3-year-olds are kind of dicks anyway. And so it's not like they're going to be like really respectful of each other's needs. I mean, as I said, my kids are 7 and 8, and we're still in that phase. So, I'm guessing that if one of your kids needs more quiet and one of your kids needs more like stimulation, there's not really any reasoning with either of them about respecting other people's needs.
How to achieve that. Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. Like my son is, everybody would assume he's the wild child, but he's the one who kind of needs to have his own kind of quiet space and spot to decompress and kind of avoids like overstimulation and stuff like that. My daughter is like total sensory seeking to the point where she almost has like no concept of danger and isn't afraid of anything. So um, a lot of that's been kind of working with their occupational therapist to get some of the toys and tools that they need to give them their kind of sensory inputs that help regulate them. So again, between the two kids, that's a little bit different. My daughter really likes like big movements, spinning, jumping, running. She's kind of a climber right now. We do have a fence around the front yard for safety purposes. It's 6 feet tall. She climbed to the top of it a couple weeks ago, so that's slightly terrifying.
And barbed wire seems like a bad choice when you have kids, but
Yeah, we can't really electrify that fence, unfortunately.
yeah, that's right. One thing for the goat, another thing for the child, right?
Yeah, I feel like we had one of those mini exercise trampolines in the living room until about last year because, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we put one up in the yard for them, and that's definitely been a help and a good distraction. And they're kind of like a round saucer. It looks like the top of a trampoline, but it's a swing. We've got a great big tree in the front yard, so there's a couple of those swings on it, and they have a play set with swings and a slide, and there's tons of stuff outside and in the house for them too.
How much pushback did you get, if any, when you started questioning whether there was, and I'm saying all of this as a neurodivergent person with kids who are almost certainly neurodivergent. So if it sounds like I'm like horribly insensitive, there's that time between when you start noticing that your kids are different to when you start like taking that more publicly. How much pushback did you get? Like our daughter was speech delayed, and there were so many people that were like, well, she'll talk when she's ready. Einstein didn't talk until he was 4, and blah 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 blah. And we know this person who didn't talk until they were 8, and they're fine. And I'm like, have you ever talked to that person? Like, I'm not sure they're fine. I'm not sure we'd go that far. Um, but knowing the importance of early intervention, um, how did you deal with any of that? I mean, as Americans, we assume that Canadians are way smarter than us in basically all ways. So I assume that people just like accepted it. But in case they didn't get the memo,
So one of my, actually both my sister-in-laws, they're educational assistants in the school system here. The oldest of the two, she has some really like high need autistic kids that she's an assistant for. So I think kind of in our family circle, and my younger sister was also had some disabilities and was on the autism spectrum growing up. So kind of within our family unit, I think everybody was pretty accepting and already kind of pretty aware of it, and everybody's kind of main goal was give the twins kind of what they need in order to succeed and provide them with the tools that they need. So fortunately that, and kind of as we've made made it more public, but told more people kind of outside the immediate circle about it, there hasn't really been any pushback. There'd be some, okay, well, like, how did you know? What signs did you notice? Like, just genuine curiosity. So, and there seems to be a lot more awareness. Like, there is an autism society here in PEI, and like, I've not, there's never been any issue with like any of the kids in their class in daycare bullying them. If anything, they want to play with them and be friends, and they're quite happy just to do their own thing.
So has it been? I know that there are a lot of wait times, but in terms of accessing services on the island, have you been okay that way, or do you have to sometimes travel further to get services?
Not necessarily travel, but there's some private stuff that we've had to pay out of pocket for while we're waiting for like the health PEI, like occupational therapy would definitely be one. So they've been on that wait list with health PEI for quite some time. I mean, we're fortunate that we have the means to pursue that privately and pay for it out of pocket. I know that's not possible in everybody's case. And then there's a program called Accessibility, and they had kind of worked with the occupational therapist to determine like what's needed in order to kind of meet their sensory needs, keep them safe. So that's how we were fortunate enough to get funding for the fence around the yard, just because they are a bit of a flight risk, and you know what farms are like as far as traffic and machinery and safety hazards. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, for any 3-year-old, but especially ones who maybe aren't aware of the risk or don't listen as well to to instruction. So right now you've said your kids are in daycare. Have there been what has like vet work, farm work, childcare looked like for your family at different stages of their life?
So we weren't actually able to find daycare until last summer when they were 2.5. So there was basically a year and a half where we relied solely on my mother-in-law, and she's a literal angel, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without her. I've been practicing part-time since returning from maternity leave, so generally 2 days a week at the clinic. For the first year and a bit, I was doing locum work over in New Brunswick, so I'd travel over to Moncton, which is about an hour and a half drive, work there for 2 days, come back home. Now that I'm practicing in PEI, that's quite a bit easier because I can at least be home at night now. Um, but yeah, the first little bit until we were able to find full time childcare that wasn't my poor mother in law was a little bit chaotic. Everybody did what they could to make it work, but
That is a lot. Is that partly because you were looking for spaces for two, or is I mean, we all know that rural childcare is hard to find anywhere, but the combination of factors.
I think a combination of both. And it's like once we found spots for them last year, it seemed like we were getting calls in September from like multiple centers because, you know, as some kids age out and go to school, then they start having more spaces.
And they were getting older too. Once they get over that 2-year threshold, then they're in a different.
Yeah, exactly. The town where they go to daycare is probably like a 15-minute drive to the farm. So it's not like insanely rural, and it's like the community where they'll be going to school once they're of school age. So it should hopefully be a lot of the same kids that'll be in their classes then.
How big is the town that you're in, Jesse?
Yeah, so Cornwall would, oh God, maybe 10,000 people. I wouldn't say it's kind of like there's enough stuff there that if we only need a few things, we'll go like get groceries there or gas rather than going all the way into Charlottetown.
Yeah, it's taking our kids to daycare and then starting them in school with the same kids has been really interesting because these are the kids that they'll, you know, graduate with. And like somebody pointed out of, I don't know, last year maybe, that it's entirely possible that we already know our kid's future spouse. And that was just like, wow, okay. But also like,
Some people do eventually leave town, though.
yeah, I mean, I hope they leave. I hope they come back, but I do hope they leave for at least a little while.
A lot of Islanders don't like to leave. That's how they find Nova Scotians that go to vet school and marry us in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Lure you over.
I was imported, so I understand. How do you deal with the struggles of trying to keep your kids safe? Besides, I mean, I think we've decided that electrifying the fence is probably not a great idea, even if it is tempting. But keeping kids safe on a farm is hard enough. And I guess I'm wondering a lot about one thing I really struggle with is not informing my kids of the boundaries, but informing people who are coming onto our farm that there are feral children roaming the place. And like they've gotten pretty good about staying out of the driveway, but also, they're older and kids are unpredictable at the best of times. And neurodivergent 3-year-olds are probably on the far end of the feral and unpredictable spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, my in-laws, they live in the yard, like their place is probably about 100 feet from our house, so having that extra set of eyes in the yard is definitely helpful. But by the same token, they're quite inclined to take off running towards Nini and Bonka's house if they feel so inclined. They're actually away on a well-deserved trip right now, and like they're pissed they can't just go over and watch Peppa Pig and eat snacks. They are not having it.
Yeah, that house has the good snacks. Could you just open the door for me?
Exactly, and they'll put Peppa on two TVs so we can just run back and forth and watch it in two places at the same time.
That is serious 3-year-old heaven right there. Right.
Oh yeah, like they absolutely love it. I can't say that I blame them. But yeah, like having the fence in the yard is a big help. The extra set of eyes with my in-laws, depending on time of year and how busy everybody is. I mean, we try as much as possible to kind of meet their sensory needs, so they're less inclined to want to run off. So like at least now we can play outside a lot more than we can in the middle of winter. So that's been a help. I don't know. I feel like we're just kind of white knuckling it day by day and trying to keep them alive, to be totally honest.
I feel like it's not an enjoyable strategy, but it's a valid strategy of just making it fucking work. Because I feel like there is this pressure and this assumption that everyone else knows what's going on and has like come up with one strategy that works perfectly at all times for everyone in their family. And we're, getting into our 5th season of this show, and I think we can safely say that. Have we talked to anyone yet, Arlene, who seemed like they had it totally buttoned down?
No one's got it all figured out. No.
Even the people without kids, I don't think any of them even have seemed like they totally had it figured. So
What are your kids like when it comes to being around animals? Because for some kids that is a positive experience, and for some kids it is not. So with their different needs, how do they feel about cows?
They like kind of running up and down the feed bunk and driving their trikes on it. As far as kind of getting like right up close to the cows, sometimes they'll kind of like walk up when they're eating at the bunk to take them like in the freestall, or like we still use like part of the old parlor to bring cows in, like for if we have to treat a sick cow or AI or something. Like they're a little kind of leery about that, and I think it's just the sheer size of it. They're getting a little bit more used to the horses. They have a pony. My son actually is kind of likes to sit on his back and ride. My daughter is only okay with it if the pony's moving and she can stand up on his back.
So she wants to be she wants to be a trick rider and not just not just go riding.
Yeah, exactly, as dangerous as possible. Yeah, I don't know. Like they're not super attached to the animals. They're just kind of ambivalent about them, to be honest. My son really seems drawn to the chickens for some reason. I don't know why. He likes to go in the chicken pen and play with the chicken feed and just kind of walk around with them.
That's what Katie likes to do too.
Yep, keeps him happy.
So kind of similar to that note, what is your favorite thing about raising kids on a farm and having a connection to agriculture?
Well, they have a little bit more space to be completely feral. My son really, really likes being in the machinery, like the skid steer and the tractor with his dad and his grandfather. So it's nice that he's able to have that growing up. My daughter has the space to just run and be free and completely unapologetically her feral self, which I hope she continues that into adulthood and doesn't care what anybody thinks. So
I think it definitely does help with, when my kids are screaming and running and screaming and naked and screaming, to not have neighbors that are like, I'm going to call the cops.
That you're not related to.
Yeah.
Katie and I both live very close to our in-laws as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I was horrified as a kid. I grew up on a hobby farm as well, and people whose in-laws lived like in the yard or right across the road, and I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine. And now my in-laws literally live right across the road. Like we share a well with them. We're that close. And I'm like, this is actually pretty nice.
yeah, no, we're pretty spoiled having them as close as we do.
And it's nice that my kids can go out in the yard and be weird, and I don't have to worry about what people think about my kid being out there for 3 hours at a crack pretending to play Minecraft in real life with his sword.
Yeah, no, my son's quite happy to just drop rocks in a bucket full of water for 45 minutes at a time, and whatever, do you, man?
Yeah, if they're not losing their minds, whatever. Just let them do it. I feel like As a veterinarian with cattle and horses and chickens and a husband and 2 little kids, what's your stain removal tactic? I feel like your laundry situation is probably fairly serious.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's laundry is kind of gross in our house. Nobody's really the lone culprit. I can't remember the brand that I usually buy. It's like an OxyGuard, OxyClean. I go through a shit ton of it. My coveralls at least get washed at the clinic for the most part. If I've got a pair that I've used at home and made dirty, I'll throw them in the washer in the milk house. But otherwise, like barn clothes come in. Um, there's a lot of picking needles out of the dryer, and I can't even yell at my husband for that because half the time they're mine.
I feel like that was one of the first things that sort of sent us on this podcast path was, when I was having my kids and people were like, "Well, I want a cloth diaper, but then I'll have poop in my washing machine." And I was like, "Yeah, poop in the washing machine. How weird. How totally never happened before." Yeah, okay.
Right?
So what's your biggest parenting struggle these days?
I mean, we kind of already talked about the keeping neurodivergent kids that are low verbal safe on a farm. We're not kind of like forcing the issue per se, but we're trying to introduce them to potty training, and the fact that they are kind of low verbal is making that a little bit of a challenge. So we're just kind of taking it at each day, letting them kind of do it at their own pace, and kind of seeing where we go from there. And where they are so young, kind of there's not a lot that we have as far as answers for what the future holds. Are they going to be able to live independently? When will they talk? Da 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 da. So just kind of the unknown of that's always hanging over my head a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard to not look into the future and live in the present when that's where our minds automatically want to go, right? Like even,
Yeah. And I mean, I've had to have that hard conversation with my mom regarding my sister because she's reasonably high functioning but still can't live independently. So it's hard not to go to that same spot when I think about what the future holds for the twins.
do you have any advice? We usually ask people about parenting advice, but I'm also wondering about, do you have any advice for people who are living like we all do, close to their in-laws in terms of keeping that relationship healthy?
I don't know. It seems to just kind of work on its own. Like, I think the fact that everybody's got their own space, their own house, and separate yards helps a little bit. When I was in vet school, my husband and I were living in the basement of the farmhouse. My in laws were upstairs. The cousins who are now in their teens and 20s were small kids running around, and it was a little bit kind of trickier for everybody to maintain boundaries that way. But I think having separate spaces has worked out well that way, and not having the giant house is kind of less overwhelming for my mother-in-law in her 70s, which I totally get.
Yeah, that makes sense too. It's not everybody who's willing to make that move though too. So it's nice that you guys have the kind of relationship where you can live together when you need to, but know that that's not a good long-term strategy.
Well, and it was kind of they had made the decision that they were ready to downsize, and like it was never an awkward forced conversation. It just kind of happened organically. I felt bad because they had so it was fall of 2022. They finally got moved in. They were I think 2 nights in their new mini home, and then Hurricane Fiona hit, and they didn't have a generator hook up yet, so they moved back in for 10 days until the power came on.
Just a little taste of it. All your stuff's there now. Now move back in.
Yeah, exactly.
So, on the advice train, do you have a piece of parenting advice that you have learned along the way or that someone shared with you that you would want to share with another parent?
Probably not to compare when my kids hit milestones to somebody else's kid. I do have a friend from college who's a daughter that's a couple of weeks younger, so very close in age, and I found it hard kind of not to compare the twins to her at first, but again, everybody's going to hit their milestones at different times. So that kind of took me a little while to wrap my head around. They're both still incredibly intelligent kids and fantastic humans, and they're going to do what they're going to do when they're ready to do it.
I think that's really important for all of us to remember.
So we ask all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
I've been thinking about this because I knew you were going to ask, and I would say so. On the rare chance that I get some downtime, I do like to go show my horse. So I would say either matching my shirt and my saddle pad to make my horse look pretty, or trying to find something in my truck that I can MacGyver together if I don't necessarily have the equipment that I need, or it's a weird job that there's not a piece of equipment for.
Now, is that vet related, or can you also do that? Okay, I wasn't sure if you're also like a repair guru.
No, no, it's very much vet related.
That is the kind of vet that we all want, though. That doesn't have to go back to the clinic to get a thing. They're like, I can figure this out with what I've got here, and maybe look around the milk room on the farm where you are.
Yeah, exactly.
So we will go ahead and move into our cussing and discussing segment. If you're a listener and want to submit yours, you can use our speak pipe to send us a voice memo or send us an email, and Katie and I will read it out for you. Those links are in the show notes. Katie, what do you have to cuss and or discuss this week?
So, as it seems to be in, I don't know, maybe most of the Northern Hemisphere, certainly North America right now, the heat and humidity in Iowa right now, it's the middle of, it's the July 15th actually, is bonkers. It is so hot and it is so humid. And apparently, we're suing Canada about wildfire smoke. I'm not sure what they think you're going to do about it, but it is pretty smoky here,
We better take care of it, though. Yeah.
which makes me feel really bad for the folks who live closer to it because if it's this nasty here, I can't imagine what it's like there. But I'm really sensitive to white noise. I find it either incredibly irritating or it puts me straight to sleep, which is normally fine, but the air conditioner has been running nonstop for like 6 weeks. And obviously, the fan on the air conditioner makes white noise.
So do you keep nodding off?
I either keep falling asleep or it irritates the shit out of me, and then I turn the air conditioner off because I cannot with the noise, and then I forget to turn it back on. And then all of a sudden it's, 80 degrees in the house, and then it takes forever for it to cool back off. And I just feel like there must be some better way. I tried earplugs, but then I can hear the white noise from inside my head, and that's actually worse than the air conditioner. So, if anyone has any useful tips on that one.
Yeah, the invention of silent air conditioners must be on the horizon somewhere.
Yeah. Or one that even makes more noise, possibly. It's this, like, the low-level humming in the background. It's just very
Yeah. Is it the same in the winter when the furnace is running? Or because it clicks on and off, it's not as bad?
it goes on and off a lot more often. I mean, possibly we could just also, I really like to have windows open, and not being able to open the windows is really a bummer. So,
Yeah, yeah, when you open them up and then you're like, "No, I regret that." Close them back up again.
yeah, especially because then the air conditioner runs more. So, that's a problem. Jesse, what do you have to cuss and discuss this week?
I know it's a necessary evil in the summertime, but construction. So the town that the clinic I work at is called Montague, and they're in the middle of doing a shit ton of construction on Main Street, and it's just such a pain in the ass when I'm trying to get to calls.
Yeah, when you think you know how much time it's going to take to get there, and then the flag person, yeah.
Exactly, and sometimes I'll be sneaky and kind of scoot the back way around the clinic to get more to the main roads, but then they'll surprise me and be like, "Oh, we're going to build a sidewalk on this stretch of road now." So,
Yeah, we dug up this whole area and we're putting in a water main, so you can't even go this direction at all.
yeah, exactly.
I feel like town construction's even more irritating because I feel like when it's like, oh, we have to build a whole new bridge, like, it's going to be closed for the next year or two. And it's like the same spot where when they're like, we're going to replace 2 squares of sidewalk, and then we're going to dig a little hole over here, and every construction zone is going to move 3 times a day. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck predicting it.
Like, you won't be able to walk or drive anywhere. You will now have to go 12 miles out of your way to get from one side of the street to the other. You know,
And I feel like at least if you're in an urban area, you could probably use like a Google Maps, because then it's, it's like, oh, construction's over there. You're going to avoid that section. But that doesn't help in a small town, because it's like Gary decided that they're going to work on this street corner today. And so that's where it's going to be.
Arlene, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
So, as we've already mentioned, we're recording this in summer, although it's not going to come out till the fall. But currently, I am in the stage of life where I have a child who's just finishing grade 11. And so is going into his final year of high school. And so I know that very early in the year, they're going to have to start applying to colleges and universities. And so I have a child who does not really have any clue what he wants to do after he finishes high school, which is fine. I mean, he's only 17. It's not like he has to have his life figured out. But it would make my life a lot less stressful if he had like a little bit of a clue. So we're doing a bunch of college and university tours over the summer, which is, part of trying to figure that out. But he's also just not the chattiest individual either. So trying to get any kind of like information out of this person to be like, so what did you think of that? Like, do you have any thoughts? Could you look over some of their website and see if you could at least, like narrow it down to a couple of courses you might like? So anyway, that's the stage I'm in, trying to be supportive and provide opportunities for learning, but also in my own head, going a little bit crazy. It's all going to work out. I'm sure it's going to be great. And he may end up just picking a school based on their mascot. I have no idea, which is also fine as long as he goes to class, but I guess we'll figure it out. One tour at a time. So thank you, Jessie, so much for joining us today. If people wanted to, I don't know, learn more about you or your farm, do you have any social media accounts that people could follow or check in with you online?
Yeah, I would say probably my personal Facebook would be the easiest. We do have a Facebook page for the farm. Hubby's not super great at updating that frequently, though. So,
what's your farm name?
Mactalla Farms, Mactalla.
Very cool. We are fellow Holstein breeders, so we might meet up at a convention someday. You never know.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.